topics that I get quite a few questions about. Will AI ruin photography forever? Are we doomed to succumb to the powers of AI and stop using traditional photography altogether? I have to admit, I don't think I've had anyone actually ask me that question with such a very doomsday tone to it. But I've definitely had people ask me about AI and photography and what I think about the topic of AI and photography, what the relationship is, and what influence AI is going to have on photography and specifically photographers in the future. So here are some of my thoughts. And just to preface this, I'm not in the least worried about what AI presents for our futures. In some senses, AI can be a very helpful tool. I definitely think there are some things to look out for and be aware of when it comes to AI, because there are definitely some dangers. But the dangers that I see in AI are not really the dangers that most people are talking about. So I also want to dive into that. I've been getting this question for a while, especially last year with obviously the rise of AI, ChatGPT, and all of these different open AIs that have become available to us, and then also different AI tools in things like photo editing and different programs that use it now, not only for information, but also for graphics and creative work. And so I didn't make a video because I was kind of like, I have an opinion, but I didn't always know how to put it into words, until recently I watched a video of another creator, and he's actually a freelance photographer. He also does videography, and he's recently started doing YouTube videos, and I really like his stuff. And I was watching his most recent video, and the topic wasn't about AI or anything like that, but it came up in one of the things he was talking about, and I really loved how he spoke about it, because it kind of put into words what I haven't been able to put into words myself. And so I thought this is the time now. So I'll pin the video so you can also go have a look at what he actually said, because I won't remember it perfectly. But he was basically talking about this whole resurgence back to vinyl, and like when it comes to music lovers, people who are now becoming fanatical about collecting vinyls, and people that are moving away from streaming, and even artists you see are now focusing much more heavily into actually producing physical albums for their fans, where vinyl completely went out of circulation. It is now one of many artists' top selling products is the vinyls, and especially the limited vinyls that they make. And so part of it is collecting, and it's because everyone's doing it. But the thing about it that is so significant is, like, if you really appreciate music, and this music lovers have been saying this for a long time, it just took a while, I think, for society as a whole to get tired of streaming and tired of the quality, because it was new and it's exciting, and it's same as AI is now. It's easy, it's accessible, and it works in your favor, or it would seem to work in your favor, but it really actually lessens the quality, and it lessens, you know, when you have so much of something, many times it lessens your appreciation of it as well. And I think we've all, as a society, as the world, have become very tired of this overabundance of things that we have access to, and we're looking for quality again. And so he talked about like how people will collect vinyl. He's like thinking about like how maybe one day photography becomes the same. It's like, yeah, you know, I used a real photographer. Like, I didn't use AI and just make it create my photos for me. Like, I actually went on a real photo shoot, and it becomes like the status symbol, and not just a status symbol. It becomes something that like almost an art collector toward photography is going to do real photos. And so in that sense, like, yeah, I'm sure AI is going to change things for photography. It already has changed so much. But I don't see AI as a threat in the way that a lot of people talk about it, because AI is very intuitive, or modern AI has been developed to a point that it is incredibly intuitive, but it cannot be creative. And that's what a photographer brings to you. It brings incredible creativity. And so just to start out and say, from the beginning, I wasn't afraid of AI. In some elements, it made me excited. Definitely less than I think most people. A lot of people were more excited than me. So I'm not afraid of AI. that is going to take over or anything. What I am afraid of AI is that it's going to steal some of the quality and some of the skills that we currently have in creative fields. And this reminds me of a colleague and a friend that I worked with in media for a few years. His name is Wesley Eland, and he currently has his own design company. So I'll also tag him, and you can go check out some of his work. But the things, working with Wesley was the first time that I really saw someone capable of truly using Photoshop. Like, there are people that say they know Photoshop, and like I've played around with Photoshop. I've spent a fair amount of hours, but actually nothing compared to someone who really understands Photoshop. Working with it, doing a few things with very basic things. But if you've ever tried to use Photoshop for anything, you will understand when I say that is one of the most complicated, probably for myself, the most complicated program I've ever tried to work with. It is just so detailed in the tools and the specific things, which is incredible. It's an incredible tool to work with for that very reason. If you know how to use it, you can do incredible things with it. But working with Wesley was the first time I saw someone actually capable of really using Photoshop for something. And one of the biggest things that I saw him do is he would create photos in Photoshop. And what he would do is he would make massive composite photos. So what you do is you take like 10 or 20 individual photos that you took, usually of the same scene, but obviously you can play around and you can be creative and take different scenes. But I'm back, and I'm going to try and pick up where I left off. I've been taking some photos today, and my SD card was full, so the video just stopped. So unfortunately, means that I ran out of space. But we're back, and I have space now, so hopefully we'll finish and I can pick up where I left off. The thing that really upsets me with AI is you can now do the same things with hardly any skill whatsoever. You just need to be able to type a prompt into a program, and AI does all of that for you. And I have to admit, AI is not as skilled as a lot of artists that I've seen. And it truly doesn't compare if you really know what you're looking for. But even for an artist that isn't looking too closely, or someone that then takes that AI product and just brushes it over and really refines it a little bit, sometimes you would hardly know the difference. And that's what upsets me. Not that AI is so powerful and it can do these things, because I'm afraid that these people are going to lose their jobs. Yes, there's definitely going to be a shift and a change in the industry, and that always happens. There's always changes. But what makes me sad is that it's going to make people lazy. It's already made me lazy, because I no longer need to learn Photoshop. I can just use generative fill or I forgot what that's called. Just remove the background with AI, you know? And it's so much easier. And for me, it's great, because I never knew Photoshop and I never knew how. But even if I did, like, it would be so tempting and so easy to just use AI, because it's 10 times or more, like, faster to just use AI, get it done, fix it up if you have to, and that's it. It really doesn't make me upset, because I think people are going to lose their jobs, or that a creative field is going to disappear, or all creative fields. It makes me upset because I know that this is going to make people lazy, and it's going to make art that much harder to do, because it's a mindset thing where you're like, but I could just use AI. I still think there are plenty of artists out there who are just going to keep doing it the old-fashioned way, which is now... To think of digital art as old-fashioned is crazy, but yeah, just actually go in and do the work. And one of the things that really encourages me, and I find quite interesting, is like, even as we're seeing AI rise, you also are seeing the old nostalgia rise at the same time, where I've seen so much film photography coming up in the professional among professional photographers in the last year, 2 years, and it's only getting more and more popular. I have seen I mentioned before, the vinyls, like people listening to old vinyls, CDs, cassettes even, and buying these over streaming. And so even though AI makes things easy, more and more I see artists say, I don't want the easy, I want art, I want creativity, I want quality, I want something that I know a human being created, and I want to be that human being to create it. So really, even though AI is definitely changing certain things, I feel like in some ways it's just pushed people over the limit to the point where they say, that's enough, I'm going back to true art. Another thing which I think took place a lot earlier than this rise of AI, which I find encouraging because it's kind of like a test. It was kind of like a test, and you can look at many things, but this one for me stands out. To compare what we say we don't know how AI is going to change the future, and there's details I'm sure we don't know, but history repeats itself, and there's been many advances in science and technology which always goes through the same cycles. And one of those which I think can very closely be compared to AI, and especially in the creative field and in photography, is animation. Because original animation, you know, in the early eras of film and movies, was hand-drawn. Every single frame that you watch in old Disney movies or any old cartoons were all hand-drawn. And then slowly they became more and more digitized in certain elements of the process, and the biggest transition from hand-drawn to being fully digitized happened about sometime in the 80s, and obviously different production companies were faster to adapt and slower. But really the 80s was the end of the hand-drawn animation cinema, except in anime. And if you are an anime fan, you will know way more about this than what I do, but anime is known for being hand-drawn, even in this digital age, and the people who create anime are considered artists. Fully considered artists, because they draw every single frame in the same way that the original animations were done. And many of these projects are done by one or two people, and they spend years or even decades working on these masterpieces, whether it's a series or a film or even just a short film. And that art is appreciated so much more. Like, if anyone is an anime fan, they are truly a fanatic, and I appreciate that, because the effort gone into these stories and these works of art, in the same way I think that photography can reach that point. If AI really does take over the way people think it is going to, the true artists will still stand out. The people that really appreciate photography for what it is, and that is an art form, are going to continue doing it in the same way that they've been, and they're probably going to become more and more fanatical about not using things like AI, or even using any digital form, going all the way back to film. And when people think film is just by chance and just like, oh yeah, you get what you get when it gets developed, they are so wrong. Film is an incredibly technical process, and you can do so much to manipulate and change those photos. And there is as much work that goes into post-production on film as there is on digital photography. But yeah, to summarize all of this, I don't think I was ever afraid of AI or AI becoming so intuitive. When I was a kid, we had a home computer, as you do when you grow up in the 2000s, and it's like one of those big box screens, and like then you have another box on the floor, which is the actual computer. And I was born too late for really playing, like, my games weren't like on stiffies, like the square stiffies. They were all on CDs. So I would have all my CD-ROMs, and I would have like my cases and play my games. And there was one game, which now you like download these games onto your phone, and they're way more complicated than they were back then. But I had one game which was a chess game, and you could play in two modes. Very basic, very simple game. Two modes. You could play two-player. Obviously, then you have two people playing chess. Or you could play AI. I said something like play against AI or something like that. And you would have this chess grandmaster sit on the other side of the screen, on the other side of the board, on the screen. And I mean, honestly, he looked more like a wizard than a grandmaster. It was like this really like dark background too. But I was like, what does AI stand for? And I remember asking my dad, I don't know how old I was. I was like really young, could barely read. I don't even remember if I read it or if I was just like, what is it? Like 8 or 9. And he was like, it stands for artificial intelligence. I was like, oh, that's cool. What does that mean? It's like, it means the computer thinks for itself. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And I think people think AI is brand new, and what AI can do is new, and it's very advanced. But AI is actually decades old. And when it was first invented, it was an incredible invention. And since then, it's only been developed into more and more complicated things. But every time you play a game that you would normally play a card game or a board game, if you play it against the computer, you're playing against an AI. That is an artificial, very low level, but it's an artificial intelligence. And so I also was a very, very big fan of Person of Interest when that series first came out. And I think that was also an early, very, very intelligent AI, obviously all fictional, also very focused on justice, right and wrong, and the morality of AI and all of these things as well. But I think I've just always been more fascinated by this than scared by it. And part of it just comes from understanding what AI is. And yes, in Person of Interest, the AI does end up taking over, and there's a good AI and a bad AI, and it's a very dramatic end to the series, if you've ever seen it. But it still wasn't something that scared me, and I still don't see AI as being anything more than intuitive. And until one day, if it is creative, which I don't think is going to happen, it can never compete with human beings and our creativity. That's my take on AI. Let me know if you guys thought this was interesting or if you have questions down in the comments. And also let me know if there are any other questions you guys have about photography or my photography specifically, and things that I can talk about.